Saga of a New World, Book 1, Dawn of the New World.
Chapter 14, Reunion. While the sheriff ties the canisters to Noah's and her horses' saddles, Astrid and Finn mount Ranger and Shiva. "Thanks for coming with me," Astrid says to Finn once they're both back in their saddles. "Gladly, but thank me once we find them. Oscar, come!" Finn yells and spurs his horse. The lieutenant mounts his motorcycle and calls to Finn and Astrid. "I'll drive slowly. Yell if something's wrong." His bike lets out a loud roar as his engine starts. Astrid and Finn gallop after the soldier until they reach the car Astrid and her parents drove in before the fog. It remains exactly the way Astrid left it, with the front door and trunk wide open. The man drives right past it. "That's our car over there," she yells to Finn. Finn immediately perks up in his saddle and yells, "Stop!" The soldier makes a full stop. "What?" he yells, his hand already on his rifle. "We can get her parents' scent from the car. It'll make them easier to track." The soldier relaxes. "Man, you gave me a scare there." "Sorry about that, but we can get a scent from the car and put Oscar on the right track to finding them." They all dismount and Finn leads Oscar to the car. At first, the dog seems a bit confused about what he's supposed to do. Oscar tries to search for a clue on the ground, but after a few light tugs on his leash and incessant pointing from Finn, Oscar understands what he's supposed to do. He smells the driver's seat up and down, his tail wagging like there's no tomorrow. "Good boy, get that scent," Finn says. Astrid and the lieutenant watch Finn and Oscar do their work. After a few seconds, the soldier asks, "So, how did you get separated from your family if you were traveling together anyway?" Astrid frowns. "I'm not sure. We got out of the car and then just kind of lost each other in the fog. It's hard to remember." "I know what you mean. I crashed my car during the fog. Drove my brand new Mercedes right into a tree. Woke up sleeping on the airbag with no idea what happened. Ever since then I've been having these weird dreams, but I guess that's nothing compared to what happened to you." Astrid turns to him and wants to ask if he really also has the odd dreams she has, even though he's still human, but Finn suddenly yells, "I think he got him." They look at him to see Oscar jump out of the car. He slowly pulls Finn along on a trail only he can smell. They follow the dog as he slowly makes his way along the road. Astrid feels like they should be moving faster, like every second they waste walking along the road is one where her family could get hurt, but she keeps her anxiety to herself. She knows that Oscar's following the scent as quickly as he can. It feels like forever, but finally the lieutenant says, "Look, that's where we met the giant, your brother." "Someone was transformed here." Finn points at a pile of ripped clothes. Oscar continues to pull, but a "stop" from Finn causes him to freeze dead in his tracks and sit down. "This is not where the scent ends," Finn informs Astrid. "Are those your parents' clothes?" Astrid quickly dismounts and runs to inspect the rags. "I see the remains of my mother's pants and shoes completely ripped apart. Here's my brother's shirt and pants, also destroyed. I don't see anything from my younger brother or father, though." Finn leaves Oscar's side for a moment. The dog tries to follow, curious if there's something new that needs to be found, but a stay from Finn makes him sit back down. Finn kneels down beside her. "We know your brother is a giant. Lieutenant, did you see anyone else with him?" "No, he was alone." "Okay, your brother and father must have stayed human, but I have no idea what your mother might have been turned into." "Maybe she got turned into an elf too? Where does that path lead?" Astrid asks as she mounts Ranger once more. Finn quickly pulls a map out of his pocket. According to this, there are several places that they could have gone. It's possible that they followed the trail to the highway, but there's also a lake and a bit further away another town. Oscar is still tracking your father, though, and this is not where the scent ends. His nose is better than any vague assumptions. Astrid nods. Then let's not waste any time. The lieutenant restarts his motorcycle's engine. Alright, I'll go back to the others then. Good luck. They watch him turn, and with a loud vroom, he accelerates back the way they came. Finn walks back to Oscar. Find, he commands, and Oscar immediately continues following the trail. Instead of going into the forest, though, he continues walking down the road. They barely walk a few paces before Oscar stops on a single bit of tattered clothing. He looks up and starts walking circles around it. What is he doing? Astrid asks. He's trying to reacquire the scent. Stay away, Finn tells Astrid as she's about to walk up to the piece of clothing. After a few more progressively larger circles, Oscar finally walks back to the piece of clothing and sits down. The scent ends here,
Finn informs Astrid. She grabs the tattered piece of clothing.
This is completely ripped. I don't even recognize who this is from. Oscar is tracking whoever sat in the driver's seat, so if your father was driving, this must belong to him. What the hell did my father transform into? Maybe a giant, Finn offers. The scent of his new form must still cling to that fabric. Let's continue tracking him. He throws the rag back on the ground and says, Find. Once again, Oscar starts sniffing the object. Wagging his tail, he follows the road for a few paces, then starts zigzagging. After a few seconds, he starts walking circles. His tail stops wagging as the wolf becomes more and more frustrated. What was clearly a new scent is losing itself. It seems to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time, which confuses Oscar to no end. He continues trying to follow it, but there is simply no spot where the scent is strongest. No point to indicate what direction he should go. He's never done that before, Finn says as Oscar desperately tries to find any clue that could tell him where to lead them. Finn turns to Astrid. The two scents must be confusing him. Let's just go to your mother's and brother's clothes and have him track their new scents instead. Astrid nods. Stop. Come, Finn orders. At first, Oscar doesn't respond. He's still trying to find a direction to take them. A tug on his leash finally tells him that he has failed. Frustrated and defeated, Oscar stops his search and trots to Finn. There's a slight hope that a good boy or a well done from Finn would tell him that this was what he was supposed to do, but it doesn't come. Oscar is sure that he just failed, probably in a spectacular manner, and that he's most likely a disappointment. They reach the spot where the clothes of Astrid's mother and brother lie. Finn pulls Oscar along. Find, he commands while pointing at Astrid's mother's clothes. Happy about a new opportunity to prove himself, Oscar races to the pile, his tail wagging once more. He buries his nose in the clothes. There are several smells in there. He searches around the pile until he finds another very clear trail that leads away from the road. Since it's the only one, he figures it must be what he's supposed to track. With new confidence, he pulls the others along. They went this way, Finn informs Astrid. Did your parents leave you any clue as to where they went? They left me with a piece of paper that said that they would wait for me at the nearest town. I'm still kinda pissed that they left me, but there was a monster flying around, so I kinda understand it. Finn frowns. Your brother must have come back to look for you. Yeah, the closest town isn't exactly a very precise location, eh? Luckily I have you and Oscar. The three follow the small road winding through the forest until they reach a spot where the trail splits two ways in a fork. A small creek flows from the right path and follows the left one. Oscar pulls them towards the shore. Finn looks down into the water and notices something. Footprints are trampled into the now dry mud next to the creek. Look, he tells Astrid. She ties Ranger and Shiva to a nearby tree and runs to the small river's edge. During the rain 4 days ago, The creek must have held much more water than it does now. Right after the event, the soil and sand around it must have been wet, and that was when someone walked through it. After 3 days, most of the mud has dried, preserving the footprints. Astrid examines the prints more closely. They are large and barefoot. Okay, we can assume those big prints are my brother's, but what was he doing close to the water? Was he thirsty? I don't think that's it. Look at that, Finn says and kneels down. Right next to the water, handprints are pressed into the dry mud, as well as what looks like a small cove in the water. Someone dragged themselves out of the water and through the mud here. The crawlings end there, next to more of your brother's footprints. Astrid has no idea why anyone would drag themselves through the mud, and she doesn't really care, because she just noticed something far more interesting.
The tracks lead onto the left path. That's where they must have gone,
Astrid says, and from the way he's standing, Oscar seems to agree. Let's hurry then. We need to find someplace safe before nightfall, Finn says. Astrid takes Shiva and Ranger's reins. You don't think we'll make it back before sundown? Finn checks his wristwatch. It's 5:15 p.m. There is no way we'll get back to the farm before dark. Astrid frowns. So we have about 2 hours before the sun sets and need to find some sort of shelter before that happens. Finn nods. They follow the narrow path as something shoots out from between the trees. Astrid almost has a heart attack and both of them reach for their weapons, but before they can pull them out, the deer has already jumped back into the thicket. Oscar looks like he wants to chase, but decides that the scent he's following is far more interesting. Holy! Astrid tries to say something, but Finn interrupts her. Go! I don't want to meet what it was running away from. Luckily, they don't meet what was chasing the deer, and soon reach the edge of a lake. The water is clear as day, and the afternoon sun reflects off the lake's surface. A few birds sit on the excavator platform that calmly floats at the center of the lake. A long conveyor belt that, just a few days ago, used to carry the gravel mined from the bottom of the lake to the machinery and silos at the shore, still provides the only way to access the platform without swimming. Oscar pulls them to the edge of the water. The 3 scents he was following stop here. The faintest one enters the water, while the other 2 continue to the left. As soon as the horses see the water, they walk to its edge to take a drink. Finn sits down next to the animals and says, I know we need to find your family, but we should rest. We've been riding all day and this seems as good a place as any. Astrid wants to protest. She's not tired at all, but not wanting to sound ungrateful, she stays quiet. They remove the bits from their horses' mouths and allow them to drink from the lake and graze, while the 2 riders sit down at the water's edge and rest a bit. You think we can drink that water too? Astrid asks Finn and nods towards the lake. Finn leans forward, cups his hands, and takes a sip. It tastes fine, so I don't see why not. Astrid slowly leans down next to him. She feels a bit weird as she fills her cupped hands with the cold water and slowly drinks it. The water itself tastes fine, but she still feels like it's unclean. While her dry throat considers it to be good enough, she only drinks as much as she needs to. You wouldn't happen to have something to eat with you, would you?
Astrid asks as she wipes her mouth.
Finn shakes his head. Nope.
Feeling her stomach cramp at the mere thought of food, Astrid groans.
God, I would kill someone for a pizza and a soda right about now. Finn grimaces. Why did you have to mention that? Now I'm hungry too. Sorry. Astrid pauses for a moment, then adds, Maybe it's just me, but I really feel like taking a swim. Finn scowls. Come on. We need to find your parents as quickly as possible and it's going to be dark soon. Astrid moves her hand through the water. I'm not taking my clothes off, am I?
While they talk, something moves in the lake. The water prevents Astrid's heat vision from highlighting whatever is down there. It takes Finn a moment to notice, but he clearly sees a dark shape coming up from the depths.
"Watch out!" he yells. While the creature breaks the surface, Astrid catapults herself away from the water. It takes them a second to realize that the head protruding from the lake doesn't belong to a crocodile-like monster, but looks more or less human. The man has light grey skin like that of a dolphin. His face looks long and thin, with large, almost entirely black eyes with no irises and only a bit of white surrounding his massive pupils. His hair is black, thick strands that barely stick together in the water.
Astrid can see his lower body beneath the surface, and where legs should be, there is a large fin.
Unlike mermaids from stories though, his tail isn't covered in scales, but the same light grey skin that covers the rest of his body. A striped shirt hides his chest, Astrid's mother's striped shirt. It takes Astrid a few moments to recover from her surprise. The merman raises one of his arms to greet them, but before he can say anything, Astrid says, "Mom?" The merman's jaw drops a bit, his lips move, but instead of words, water bubbles out of his mouth. He grimaces and retches. Astrid wants to take a step towards him, but he holds up a finger as though to say, "Give me a second." With weird, gargled, grunt-like noises, he pulls himself out of the water until his upper body leaves the lake and exposes 3 slits on either side of his body, right underneath his ribs. The openings expand, allowing most of the water in his lungs to flow out. The slits close again as he takes a deep breath. "Astrid, is that you?" His voice sounds deep and has a very rich tone. Astrid scrambles back to the water's edge. "Yes, it's me! Where's Dad and Killian and Elijah?" "Killian went to look for you. You have no idea how good it is to see you're alive. After the fog, we weren't sure, but let's not dwell on that. You got transformed too. You know, you look a bit like an elf with those pointy ears. Are you okay, or is your transformation bad? And who is that?" Astrid can barely follow the mountain of questions her mother just threw at her. "That's Finn, a hunter from a nearby town. He helped me find you. I'm fine, but you're a mermaid?" "Me? Ah, yes," the merman who used to be Astrid's mother says, and lifts his tail out of the water. "Though I think merman is the more appropriate term. Not being able to walk is not nice, but I can breathe water now. I'm still getting used to the fact that I have to empty my lungs before I talk, and swimming underwater too long without breathing air makes me feel like I'm drunk, but never mind that. All that matters is that you're alive. Your brother will be so happy to see you." His gaze shifts to Finn. "Thank you for helping Astrid find us. We don't really have anything, but if there is any way we can help you, just ask." "Thank you, but it was the least I could do." Astrid's mother smiles back, then turns back to his daughter. "You have to tell me everything that's happened, but your brother will want to know too. Now we just need to find your father and little brother, and then we'll all be together again." "What do you mean? Are Dad and Elijah not with you? And where is Killian?" "We couldn't find your father after we woke up. We lost your younger brother yesterday. We were attacked by some sort of flying monster. It grabbed your brother and flew off." His voice falters. He pauses and his gaze sinks. But then his eyes snap back up to Astrid. "But thank God you're here now. We thought you were gone too. Killian is on that floating platform. Quick, I'll tell him you're here." The merman pushes himself back into the water. With a single stroke of his tail, he launches himself towards the platform in the middle of the lake. Astrid's heart sinks like a stone. Elijah carried off by a flying monster, and Dad is nowhere to be found? She feels like falling to her knees and crying. She's only stopped when Finn says, "Go greet your family. I'll stay with the horses." Astrid gives him a quick nod. "There is no point in grieving. At this point, I have to take everything this world is going to give me, and right now, I found Mom and Killian, alive and probably well. That has to be enough. Astrid runs to where the conveyor connects to solid land as quickly as she can. Before she's even halfway to the conveyor, she sees the merman launch himself out of the water like a dolphin. He yells something, and a moment later a large tarp is pushed aside by a massive hand. Astrid can see her brother's giant frame from the shore. He spots her too, and runs onto the conveyor to meet her halfway. She runs past a large pile of gravel and several big machines. With a quick jump, she leaps onto the conveyor. Her brother's every step shakes and tilts the entire structure. "Astrid, where have you been?" Her brother charges into her like an elephant and lifts her up like she weighs nothing. "Looking for you guys," she says before the giant almost crushes her in his embrace. She gasps from the pressure before he sets her back down. "Look at you, sis. You got a new body too. What's it like?" "Different. I'm taller and stronger, and I have heat vision. What's it like to be a giant?" Her brother looks even bigger than the giant policeman. He is absolutely huge. His back and shoulders are covered with long, dark gray fur that's almost black, while the rest of him shows gray skin. It's a bit like that of an elephant. Adorning his head are two large horns similar to those the giant policeman had. His hair and the magnificent beard that adorns his face have the same color as his fur.
A smile splits her brother's square face.
"I'm almost as tall as a bus. I mean, look at this." He flexes his muscles. His arm somehow looks both muscular and fat at the same time. "I can lift Mom up like it's nothing." Their mother suddenly surfaces with a splash. He spits out some water and says, "I'm so glad you found us. The only question that remains is, what do we do now?" Killian replies, "Look for Dad, of course. Then get Elijah back, or at the very least murder the hell out of that dragon. What else?" Astrid blinks. "A dragon? Never mind, you can tell me about it later. Let's talk to Finn. We need some place to put the horses before it gets dark." Her brother immediately snaps his head to look at her again. "Who's Finn?" He trails off as he notices the revolver on Astrid's hip. "Is that a gun? Where did you get that?" Astrid looks at the weapon. "Finn gave it to me." "Did you use it?" her brother quietly asks. The face of the woman that hit her over the head and a loud, sharp bang flashed through her head. "They don't need to know," Astrid decides. "No, I'm a terrible shot, but it is great for keeping others from starting a fight. People back down at the mere sight of this thing." Astrid pats the holster to emphasize her point. The sun is already getting lower as Astrid and her brother reach the shore. Her mother can't follow them, but pulls his torso out of the water and watches them from the water's edge. Finn leaves the horses to graze and sits down against a tree. He watches Astrid and her brother come closer and only gets up when they almost reach him. Killian extends his hand. "So you must be Finn. Nice to meet you." "You must be Astrid's brother. Nice to meet you too." Finn tries to shake Killian's hand, but only manages to grab two of his fingers. Killian smiles. "What were you thinking, giving my sister a gun? She's probably already shot herself in the foot, hasn't she?" He winks at Astrid, a wide smile on his face. Finn smiles as well. "No, not really. She's actually doing quite well for someone who has never handled a weapon before." "Oh!" Killian slowly turns his head back to Astrid. "Miss, why do you enjoy shooting so much? Is a natural. I always knew you were just jealous when I told you about target practice." At least his humor is still as bad as before, Astrid thinks and smiles. "Of course I was," she says as she rolls her eyes. Finn followed their small exchange with a smile. "Now, do you have a safe place for tonight?" We won't make it back to Rot Rock before nightfall. Killian answers, Up until now I used the excavator platform. Animals left me alone there, but I don't think the horses will want to sleep there. There's also a small shed next to the machinery. I didn't fit through the door, but you could hide the horses there. Finn nods. Then that's what we'll do. Astrid, I'll sleep with the horses. You can sleep with your family, if you want to. Astrid does want to sleep with her family. A few days ago, she would have been the exact opposite of thrilled to sleep right next to her brother, with nothing but a thin blanket separating her from a cold, hard steel floor. Of course, this is a new world, and even though the ground beneath her is hard, she sleeps well knowing that she's not alone, and that she at least still has her brother and mother, and Finn.
Thank you for listening to this Ember and Sparks production. Click the box on the left to listen to the next chapter or the box on the right to see an overview of all chapters available for this story. Check out the links in the description to listen to this audiobook without interruption. And before you go, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to never miss a new story. See you soon.